Hey everyone, DylanBandicoot here, and it is finally time to celebrate Bandicoot Month for the very first time on my channel. Just like with Zelda Month, this is an annual celebration that takes place every single year in the same month. For Bandicoot Month, that is June, just like how it is November for Zelda Month. Both Crash Bandicoot and The Legend of Zelda are my favorite franchises of all time, so the fact that they both have a month dedicated to them on the internet is really amazing in my opinion. With that said, for my very first Bandicoot Month video, I thought it will be a great idea to look at the original version of the very first Crash Bandicoot game for the PlayStation 1. Let's go!
Crash Bandicoot. This is the second game I've ever played. Fun fact, I was only 2 years old at the time. The year was 2001. My sister and I recently got our first video game console, the PSOne. Not realizing that the brand new PS2 was about to come out that same year, we were about to embark on a wonderful journey that is the PS1's fantastic library of games, consisting mostly of platformers that toddlers and kids who have no knowledge of reading, especially reading in a different language, can play very easily. After all, English isn't my native language and not many games at the time supported Dutch. Crash Bandicoot is the perfect example of such a game. Navigating the main menu is super easy once you memorize what everything means. There are only two actions you can perform in this game, jumping and spin attacking, and of course the levels are very linear, resembling a hallway more often than not. A lot of people think that Crash Bandicoot and its sequels are very boring games where you just go straight because of this actually. You see, Crash plays like a 2D platformer but in 3D most of the time. When playing games in 3 dimensions became a thing, most people wanted to explore giant sandboxes filled with collectibles just like in Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. And I get that. Very often I prefer these types of games over linear 3D platformers too. However, in my opinion, linear Crash games are not boring or unnecessary. I think it's important for linear 3D platformers to coexist with the more open-ended 3D collectathon platformers. Like I said earlier, I was only 2 years old when I started playing video games, and for a 2-year-old, the hardest linear 3D platformer is a million times easier than even the easiest collectathon platformer for a couple of simple reasons. First of all, most collectathon games require a lot of reading knowledge in order to understand what to do. Toddlers obviously can't read. Second of all, collectathon platformers are just too overwhelming for toddlers. Heck, I even know casual gamers that are in their 20s that don't even understand collectathons because it's too overwhelming for them. One of them couldn't even collect a single moon in Mario Odyssey. And third, the 3D space in Crash makes it easier to avoid enemy attacks compared to 2D platformers, which is why the concept of a 2D platformer but in 3D still works well. And it's also just nice to play around with the 3D environment anyway, even in linear levels. With that said though, let's slow down a bit and go back to the very beginning of this game. Oh yeah, this music alone is already giving me major nostalgia. Oh yeah, that old Naughty Dog logo with the barking dog sound effect. I wish they kept that. And there he is, our orange marsupial hero himself, Crash Bandicoot. This is one of those games that doesn't show you the intro cutscene unless you wait a while at the title screen, strangely enough. The story goes as follows. There are two evil scientists, Dr. Neo Cortex and Dr. Nitrus Brio, aka Brio. Cortex took over these 3 islands southeast of Australia called the Wampa Islands, and he mainly uses the 3rd island as his evil lair. The intro cutscene starts immediately in the middle of a conversation between Brio and Cortex. Brio seems to be warning Cortex that the Evolvo Ray he invented to mutate an army of animals they kidnapped from the islands is not ready yet, and that they have no idea what it could do. Cortex then calls Brio a moron and says that this Bandicoot will be his general, and that he will lead Cortex's army to world domination. Cortex seems very impatient and just wants to create Crash, who is supposed to become one of his best and most loyal minions. Actually, if you play Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time, you'll actually find out the reason why Cortex was so impatient and why he wanted to create Crash immediately, which is really cool, but I'm not going to spoil that for you. Anyway, the evolve array that Embryo invented, but that Cortex took the credit for, failed to brainwash Crash because Cortex attempted to use it way too soon. Cortex then attempts to capture Crash, but he makes his escape by accidentally crashing through the window. Uh-oh. However, it seems that while he was locked in Cortex's castle, Crash fell in love with a female Bandicoot that was also kidnapped and mutated by Cortex, Tawna. Now that Crash has escaped, Cortex wants to turn Tawna into his general instead. It is now up to Crash to get back to Cortex Castle to stop Cortex's evil plan and save Tawna. And we're back to the main menu now. So here's something interesting. Even though you can save your game on your memory card, if you don't have a memory card, you can use passwords instead. Ah, the good old days of passwords. I miss these things like tooth pain. Anyway, let's just start the game now. Here we are in the first level, and Sanity Beach. After Crash fell out the window, it seems that he got washed up all the way to the first island, and Sanity Island. Like I said earlier, this is a very linear 3D platformer where you go from point A to point B. And Sanity Beach is a good example of a first level. You start off in an area with a decent amount of space to play around with and to get used to the 3D movement. You're also immediately presented with the game's main collectible, crates. Breaking them has definitely been the most satisfying thing in this franchise ever since the very beginning. Question mark crates can contain a bundle of Rumpa Fruit or an extra life. Collecting 100 Rumpa Fruit gives you an extra life, obviously. Regular crates only give you Rumpa Fruit, and then there are the bouncy crates, which you're supposed to jump on 10 times in a row for 10 pieces of Rumpa Fruit. Crates with Crash's face on it give you an extra life. Checkpoint crates give you a checkpoint where you respawn if you die, and then there is the Aku Aku crate. According to the manual, Aku Aku is a witch doctor that looks over the islands as a benevolent protector. Sensing Crash's mission to thwart Dr. Cortex's plans and thereby cleaning up the pollution that he's caused, Aku Aku has scattered masks throughout the islands to help Crash succeed. Collecting an Aku Aku gives Crash an extra hit point, collecting another one gives you 2 extra hit points, and collecting 3
makes you a destructible machine of chaos.
Oh, that's weird. All of the crates I broke respawned. It's probably nothing. Well anyway, now that we're done at Sanity Beach, it's time to move on to the second level, Jungle Rollers. Aw, look how cute. It's the very first TNT crate in the franchise. If you try to break these with your spin attack, you will take damage, so you have to jump on them instead, start a countdown of 3 seconds. Get away as fast as possible and let it explode without getting hit by the impact yourself. Ah, the good old TNT sound effect. So iconic, so nostalgic. Oh, that's weird. Did I just collect an extra life for Tawna? Okay, so this game has a really weird system for saving your game and or getting passwords. Some levels have 3 Tawna tokens hidden in them. Finding them is pretty easy. Once you collect all 3 of them in a level, you will have to play a bonus round. These bonuses usually contain quite a lot of crates with lots of Rumpa Fruit and extra lives, which is really neat. However, here's the weird part. After beating a bonus, Tawna will tell you how much progress you've made in the game so far, which is nice, but you will also get the opportunity to save your game or get a password, whichever you prefer. But here's the thing. If you beat a bonus stage, the bonus will disappear forever. You'll never get to play it in your current profile ever again. This is probably to prevent you from saving whenever you want, I guess? But still, the fact that you can't save whenever you want is pretty messed up, especially with how difficult this game can get later on. But here's an even bigger issue. Let's say you died during a bonus round. What then? Well, if you die during a bonus round, the bonus will also disappear forever and you don't get to save your game or get a password for that level ever. Which means that if you were planning on turning off your PlayStation to take a break, you basically can't do that without losing progress. You'll have to keep on playing until you find the next bonus round. And if you finally get to the next bonus round, you have to make sure not to die again this time, or else you're even more screwed. Oh, and if you run out of lives and get the game over, guess what? You'll also lose all of your progress prior to your last save. Now that's just messed up. This part of the game definitely didn't age well at all. Terrible save systems aside, check out what I can do. Cool, huh? That's 21 years of practice right there. Okay, we reached the end of another level right here. Oh, Crash sure looks happy. Is it because I didn't die this time? Huh? Okay, so here's the thing. In every single Crash game, you get a gem for breaking every crate in a level, which is really neat. But in Crash 1, in Crash 1, you have to break all crates in a level without dying even once. That's also the reason why all of the crates respawned in Sanity Beach after I did an oopsie there. If you beat a level without dying, but you didn't get all the crates, the game will tell you how many crates you missed by...
crushing Crash with crates.
Yeah, another mechanic that didn't age so well, but more about that at a later point in the video. Oh yeah, there are also bouncy crates in this game with an arrow on them, which don't give you Wumpa Fruit unless you break them with a spin attack. These ones, however, are made of iron and cannot be broken. Now here's something interesting. Some levels in this game are kind of like 2D platformers, but you can move in all directions anyway. I really like these kinds of levels a lot. I kinda wish Kirby 64 was more like these levels. Oh, hello there. Whoa! Hey! There! Gotcha! Stupid guy. Okay, time to talk about one of my favorite levels from when I was a kid. Boulders. This is the very first chase level in the franchise. Basically, you run towards the screen while getting chased by a boulder. This was pretty mind-blowing as a kid. This was also the very first video game level I was able to beat on my own. I also got my very first gem here as well. It's really great that this level of all levels was chosen as a reference in Uncharted 4. That really made me happy. Another level that blew my and many others' minds back in the day is Hog Wild. This is the very first instance of an animal riding stage in the franchise. This was actually the second level I was able to beat and get the gem on my own when I was 2 years old. This level is so much fun. The music gets all wacky, you're in this native village where you have to avoid the villagers and some totem poles, and the way Crash looks at the player before jumping on the warthog, like he's trying to say, "Wanna have some stupid fun with this boar?" Crash, what are you doing with that boar behind the closed curtain? Crash! Crash! Although I think it's finally time to talk about the physics in this game. They're questionable at best sometimes. Now don't get me wrong, this was one of the first 3D platformers ever made, and in my opinion, I think Naughty Dog nailed it pretty well with this one. But there definitely are some problems with the way Crash feels that don't always hold up well. For starters, Crash feels really heavy, especially compared to his newer adventures. There's something about the way he jumps that just doesn't always click well going back to this game. I'm not entirely sure how to describe what exactly feels off about the jumping. Maybe it's the big arc that Crash makes in the middle of his jump that just goes on for a little too long? I'm not entirely sure myself, even after these many years. But that's not the only problem with controlling Crash in this game. I don't know why, but whenever I'm moving Crash around and I let go of the D-pad to make him stop, he just keeps on walking for a split second longer than I want him to, which sometimes makes Crash feel very slippery to control. Oh, and sometimes you're doing really well, and then something like this happens. However, it has been 21 years since I first played this game. I've gotten used to these controls long ago, and as long as you're used to them, they're fine. Oh, it's this? Now there are embryo tokens? What are these for then? So, sometimes a level will contain an embryo bonus similar to the Tawna bonus rounds. These bonus rounds are pretty tough platforming challenges that usually feature lots of TNTs. Weirdly enough, you don't get anything after beating these bonus rounds. You don't even get to save your game. So what's the point? I always wondered ever since I was a kid. Well, when revisiting this game for this video, I realized that it's probably just supposed to be a fun optional challenge to earn some extra lives. After all, unlike the Tawna bonus levels that go away forever for some reason after you clear them or die, the Brio bonuses can actually be done as many times as you like per playthrough. Neat! You don't even have to do these for 100% completion! Even neater! I actually just realized I haven't talked about the map yet. As I said earlier in this video, there are 3 islands that Cortex took over. The first island is Sanity Island, the second one is Wumpa Island, which is kind of a weird name considering the 3 islands together are named Wumpa Islands, so why is this one exactly the Wumpa Island? Maybe it's because this one has lots of ancient ruins and lost cities, meaning that in the distant past this was maybe the most sacred island of the 3. And then there is the third island, Cortex Island. I like how this game is basically a journey through all 3 of the islands. It makes this game feel very adventurous. And the way the levels and bosses are spread out and how every level tells a story is also really great. The game starts with Crash getting washed up at Sanity Beach. Then he quickly finds himself in the depths of the jungle, stumbling upon ruins every once in a while. Then he has to climb a fortress protecting the nearby village of the natives. He then crosses the river and finds himself in the home of the village chief, Papu Papu. He then makes his escape from the village with the boar and climbs another fortress so he can leave Sanity Island. He then somehow goes to the second island. I don't know how he does this, but luckily 8 years later Crash to Insanity confirmed that Crash probably does this by stealing a boat from the natives, which is a cool added detail made by different developers that aren't Naughty Dog. Crash then has to climb a waterfall, which sadly enough is a cancelled level. Then at the top of the waterfall he finds Ripperoo, Cortex's first mutated minion that isn't a failure like Crash, I think. Then we get some more levels, such as lost cities, the inside of a creepy ruin, a bridge that has obviously seen better days, and another village? Huh. Must be a hidden village or something. Then at the end of the second island, you see a volcano. Is it a level or is it another boss? It's a boss against another one of Cortex's minions. Then you go to the third island, which is completely taken over by Cortex. You go through a machinery, a generator room, sewers with lots of toxic waste, and all of it is controlled by a freaking mafia, who are under the command of another one of Cortex's minions, the next boss, Pinstripe Potoroo. After that is one more bridge that has seen better days, and then the climax of the game starts in my eyes. You climb Cortex's castle from the outside in Slippery Climb, one of the hardest levels in the game. Then you're finally inside Cortex's dark and creepy castle in Lights Out, followed by some random ruin that was still there from the distant past, I guess. Followed by one more machinery, and then you have to face off against Cortex's right hand man, Brio. Fighting him causes a lot of damage to the island, and Crash quickly has to navigate Cortex's lab filled with his robot lab assistants in one final level before facing off against him on top of his blimp while Cortex Island burns in the distance. It's such a neat way of telling a story with just the environments of the game combined with just a little bit of imagination from the player. And the fact that you can't tell on the map which environment is a regular level or a boss battle beforehand is also really cool. I love the bridge levels in this game, by the way. They're so clever. And look, the boars are taking their revenge as unbeatable enemies. Ah! Or how about Toxic Waste? It's such a simplistic level that was obviously inspired by Donkey Kong. I loved this level long before I even knew what Donkey Kong even was. Speaking of Donkey Kong, did you know that Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest was Naughty Dog's biggest inspiration when making this game? To be honest, yeah, I can see the resemblance, especially on the third island with all the factory levels. The way secrets are handled is done really well too. For example, here's a pad of floating Wumpa fruit, but how are you supposed to get to those without falling to your death? Shouldn't game developers only put collectibles in places you can actually go? Well then, try getting them. Oh, look at that! An invisible path was here with secret crates and everything. Clever. Another thing that really makes the presentation of this game stand out is the amazing soundtrack composed by Josh Mansell. I already praised Hog Wild music before for being a very comical high energy track, but every single other song in this game is very ambient. Crash's first adventure is also his most lonely adventure, and the ambient music really sells that aspect very well. Exploring a jungle actually feels like exploring a jungle thanks to the light tribal-esque music playing in the background. Or how about the chanting you can hear when climbing a fortress? Always makes me think that it's the natives spotting Crash and warning each other. And then there is the creepy music in some of the later levels, like Temple Ruins or Fumbling in the Dark, and of course Slippery Climb. Or how about the more funky music in levels that feature lots of technology and futuristic environments? Even these are surprisingly ambient, despite the fact that they also sound like something you'd want to jam out to. It's really good stuff. Let's go back to the boss battles though, as I kinda want to talk more about these in depth. First, there's Papu Papu. This boss is a big joke. You have to jump on his head 3 times in order to win. You're supposed to avoid his attacks until he gives you an opening to jump on his head, but not only can you effortlessly avoid his attacks by simply standing on his chair, you can also jump on his head whenever you want, meaning that the fight can be over in probably less than 10 seconds if you want to. Still, for a very first boss, I don't think this is a bad thing. It especially felt very satisfying to beat him as a kid. After all, this was the very first boss fight I've ever fought in my life. Next up is Ripperoo, a crazy mutated kangaroo that loves TNTs. He jumps around in a very simple pattern and there are giant TNT crates floating down the waterfall. You're supposed to activate these by jumping on them, and if you've timed it right, the impact will damage Ripperoo. This is in my opinion the toughest boss in the game. However, I got very lucky and timed the TNTs at just the right moment on this playthrough. And as you can see, the fight was over in mere seconds because of this. But still, if you don't get lucky, this is the hardest fight in the game, trust me. Next up is Koala Kong. According to the manual, Cortex gave him too many muscles and not enough brain cells. Because of this, he's pretty dumb and just throws boulders at you, which you can eventually spin back at him after a while he is flexing his muscles to show off. Not a very interesting fight in my opinion. Pinstripe, on the other hand, has a very interesting mechanic. You have to hide Crash behind a chair in order to avoid his bullets, and then when Pinstripe is reloading or moving around, you can counter him very quickly. This is definitely one of the most unique bosses of its era in my opinion. Very clever idea that I wish was brought back and expanded upon in the future sometime. Maybe one day. Then there's Brio. I think this is the second video game boss I was able to defeat very easily on my own when I was a toddler. Although maybe Pinstripe was the second one and Brio was the third. I don't remember it very well. This guy throws potions at you which you have to avoid and sometimes jump on the blobs that come out of them in order to win the fight. The cool part of this fight, on the other hand, is at the very end when he freaking drinks his own potions and mutates himself into some kind of Hulk. That was mind-blowing as a kid. And then there is Cortex himself. This is such an epic boss fight with very epic music playing in the background. This fight is not that difficult, but pretty damn fun and satisfying to end the adventure with. And just like that, we saved Tawna. Good job, Crash! However, there's more. So before you fight Cortex, you have to beat this level that isn't actually a level, called the Great Hall. But you just jump once and BAM! You've beaten the level! Huh? As it turns out, every time you earn a clear gem in a level, a gem platform will appear in the Great Hall. Collect all the gems in the game and you will get a secret ending where Crash escapes with Tawna without having to fight Cortex. But why did Tawna not escape on her own? She was clearly ready and perfectly capable of doing it on her own. She's right there with the bird on the balcony. You also get a nice epilogue of what happened to all of the bosses of this game, which is always a nice completion bonus. Getting all the gems is an absolute nightmare in this game though. After all, you have to break all crates in a level without dying. In levels such as Boulders and Hog Wild, this is doable, But then there's the bridge levels and Sunset freaking Vista, oh god. To top it all off, some levels give you a color gem instead of a clear gem, which unlocks a secret gem pad in another level, so you can finally break all crates and get the gem in those other levels. Oh, and the green gem lets you skip Castle Machinery while getting a crap ton of extra lives, which is very satisfying. After all, the end of the level is right there taunting you if you don't have the green gem. Some of these gem pads are kinda wonky though. That wasn't my fault! There are also 2 Cortex bonus rounds in this game that unlock an extra optional level, each for 2 more gems, and are also necessary obviously. Wallhawk and Fumbling in the Dark being the optional levels in this game. But I did it! A couple of months before the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy was released, I 100% completed this game for the first time, and I still have my profile to prove it. Heck, I was so proud of this achievement that I made a video about it as proof back in the day on my second channel, DylanBandicoot Extra. The reason I wanted to complete this game was because I accidentally got the red gem in Slippery Climb. You know, the hardest level in this game? I accidentally beat the level without dying while breaking all crates and got my very first colored gem. Of course I had to go the extra mile and complete the entire game now, I thought. After 3 days of wasting blood, sweat and tears trying to get all the gems, I finally did it. And I'm still very proud till this day of this achievement.
Now I know the original Crash Bandicoot doesn't always hold up well, but regardless, I still had fun revisiting the original for the very first time since the Insane Trilogy came out, which in my opinion contains the definitive edition of Crash 1. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching my very first Bandicoot Month video, and I can't wait to show you guys more videos about my favorite Bandicoot. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to subscribe and click the bell if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to like, comment and share as well if you like to. This was DylanBandicoot, and I'll see you guys hopefully next time.